In this video, I'm going to show you how to foil. With a pivot, there are many different approaches to how you're going to put foils in the hair. But I'm going to show you one technique today that kind of encompasses all of them. We create lines in our haircuts and in our hair colors. Vertical, horizontal, diagonal, we create them all. I'm going to show you all of these lines in one technique. This is going to create beautiful, bright, face framing, money piece happening in the front. We're going to start dividing the head in half and creating two pivoting sections right at the front. A pivoting section is taking every slice from the same point. If I take my sections back like this, I'm only just taking diagonal back sections. But if I take my sections all starting at this point, which is what we're going to do, then my first section will be there, and then there, and then there, and then there. So that I end up coming horizontal, diagonal, 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 and then vertical. So I'm actually creating vertical, diagonal, and horizontal sections when I create a pivoting section. What happens when we pivot is that the point of the pivot is going to be your brightest section of hair. So because we want to create a lot of brightness around the face, if you're looking to do a money piece or just get a little extra brightness in that area, this is what you're going to want to do. You want to make sure that your pivot, that point, whatever point that you're at, and you can do this anywhere on the head, but in this case we're going to do it right in the front. This point right here is going to be the brightest area of the head. So let's get started. My first section that I'm going to take is right here at the hairline. If you're looking for a really strong money piece, I would advise that you just take a slice of hair. If you want something that's going to grow out a little bit softer, then you can actually weave out your section. So a slice is just one straight line, where a weave would be taking this back and forth to separate it. So you're leaving a little bit of hair out and you're taking a little bit of hair with you. But because I want so much brightness, I'm actually just going to take this whole slice of hair. Be careful to make sure that your sections are thin enough that you can see through them. I was always told you should be able to read the newspaper through your section. In today's world, it will be read your cell phone through your section. If you can't, then your section is too thick. A section that is too thick is not going to allow the lightener to penetrate through the whole piece of hair. So what will happen is that you'll paint the top, but then when you flip it over, none of this is going to have any color on it. And it's because the section is just too thick. Lightener goes where you put it. Color will sometimes seep through, but lightener won't. Lightener is just going to sit on the top and it's not going to get right through if your section isn't thin enough. So I take my section, I hold it between my fingers, and I take my foil and I place it in my hand like this. Take my tail comb and I put it at the bottom of the foil, leaving about an inch at the bottom. I flip my foil over the top and then I insert it like this. Make sure that you give the hair a nice tug, a real nice tight pull, and then you can pull out your comb. When you're applying your lightener, you want to start probably about an inch or so away from the root. So we're going to just apply it there. And we're going to go back at the end and get that. I like to work in a back and forth crisscross motion while I'm putting on lightener, as it really forces the product into the hair. So we got lots of product on there, which is exactly what we want. Now, I still want to make sure that I get it close to the top. You just don't want to have too much product up here. What will happen is it's going to seep out of the foil. This is going to result in something called bleeding, and it's going to come out of your foil. I like to take my brush and I like to do it on a diagonal, and I like to dust the top of it like this, as opposed to going in on a really harsh line. And I just make sure I'm using some of this excess product here and going up. So I still want to make sure that it's saturated. I just don't want it to be too heavily saturated. The other thing I do to prevent the bleeding from happening is I'll use a perm paper. So perm papers, in my opinion, are multi-purpose, and I like to put it right at the top of my foil. When I do that, if and when the lightener starts to grow and expand, it gets caught on the paper and it helps to catch it before it gets onto the hair. So we're gonna fold up our foil. When I flip this over, I have a little flap here now. What you can do is you can lift this up to make sure that you're fully saturated on both sides, which I am. And then I like to take this and I like to just stick my comb in it and make sure that it's as close to the scalp as I can get it. By doing that, it is going to help if there is any growth of the product, any seepage that happens, it'll help to catch it before it gets on the rest of the hair. So I'm just gonna lock my foil in place. So I like just to take both sides and lock them in place. For this technique, I'm actually going to do 2 right on top of one another, and then I'm gonna start doing my diagonals and I'm gonna leave space out in between. If you don't leave space out in between your foils, you end up with a panel or a really large chunk of color. By leaving space in between, it creates a lot of softness. So for this technique, I'm only gonna do the first couple of foils right on top of one another to give a lot of strength in that area. And then I'm going to transition into those diagonal sections, leaving gaps of hair in between. Again, so I'm going to take my foil, I'm going to put it around my comb, take my section, pull on it nice and tight, apply my product a good inch or so away from that root area, and then create that crisscross motion to really force the product in. And then create that little bit of a diagonal line to go up into that root area. A perm paper for extra protection. And give it a fold. And then see how there's just a little bit of hair or root exposed there. By sticking your comb in there and really securing that flap, it's really going to do a great job to protect the hair. So our first 2 foils are in. They were one on top of the other right at the hairline, more on that vertical line. So we're going to start to pivot from this point right here in the front. Pivoting is often confused with diagonal sections. Although they are diagonal, they're not coming from back here. They're all coming and stemming from this one point. I'm going to take my next section right here and I'm going to come on a diagonal back. So what this is going to do is it's going to leave some room in between the last foil that I did and the foil that I'm doing. I'm going to secure this hair out of my way. This is a very large section of hair and it's kind of a triangle in shape. So the point is up here and then it's wider down here because I'm starting that pivot. They call it a pinwheel, pizza shape, whatever. It's all coming from this one point. Okay, so here's my point right here. And I'm just gonna slice a thin section right off of the top of that. So all of this is going to be left out, but I am gonna color this section right here. You'll also want to take notice of the brush that I'm using. So I am using a brush that has longer bristles on it. Whenever you're doing large areas of hair, longer bristles are just much more efficient. If I was only going to be going in and touching this up, doing the roots, I would choose a shorter bristle brush. My next section is coming right from that same point, that pivoting point. I'm still in a diagonal back, but I'm up a little bit higher than I was before. As I get going further back, I may not have to anchor one side of this, just makes it a little bit faster. So again, I have a nice little triangle section here. I'm only going to take off the very top of the triangle. And you can see that this pivoting piece is still coming right from this section right here, and that's what I want. The other thing to be mindful of is the size of your section that you're taking. So we know how thin to take it. But the size of your section should never be more than about the size of a peace sign. That's to get it nice and compact in your foil. That's about as wide as you're going to want to take it. And just be careful too, as you're folding them, you don't want to fold the hair, you only want to fold the foil. If you start folding the hair, it actually pulls the hair out of the foil and defeats the purpose of putting the foil in there in the first place. Okay, my next section again, coming from this pivot. So now I'm still diagonal back, but you can tell I am getting closer to the top, so I'm getting a little bit more horizontal as I move up. All right, so now we're on the very last section on the top. Now, you can leave this out if you want a really soft grow out by leaving out this top section. It kind of creates a little bit of a veil on top of the light pieces, so you don't really notice those roots coming in. If you want maximum brightness, then you should do that one piece. However, I like to weave this piece, so I'm going to show you that. So the way that I weave, and everybody does this a little bit different, is I like to slice it first so I know exactly how much hair that I'm working with. And then once I get the slice how I want it, then I go through and then I weave. So by weaving, you're just kind of moving that comb up and down, up and down. And so then some of it stays out and then some of it is going to be in the foil. So we're going to use this piece right here. So now we're going to repeat the exact same thing on this side. Okay, so this whole top section is done. Now, what's really important that many, I think we forget, is the money piece isn't just this bang area. It's also the area down through here. You don't just want to have two strips of color here and then nothing for it to flow into. So it's really important that we incorporate this bottom section as well. That way too, when you style the hair away from the face, if you're doing curls or waves, all of this brightness is exposed throughout that whole section. So I'm going to just flip these up out of my way and I'm going to section just underneath where they're at. So you can do the exact same technique that you did on the top. So do your pivot, you can do 2 back to back, and then we can start to move in those diagonal sections. This section usually doesn't require quite as many. I usually do my 2 back to back and then I'll do 1, 2, maybe 3, depending on the density of the hair. This section is probably the trickiest because it is completely vertical. I'm going to direct the hair over this way across the face. It's going to give me the best tension. And I don't want to paint over her nose, but I can paint right here. I can use her forehead and the side of her face, but I do want to have the foil in my hand to get the rest of it. And one more right behind it. Okay, so I have my 2 back to back, and then I'm just gonna pop in a few diagonal. So a diagonal right there. Remember too, the diagonal back, the hair is gonna fall this way, which actually creates more brightness on the face. So you're actually drawing attention toward the face as you put in these diagonal back sections. Okay, our mannequin is completed. So we have a pivoting section on the top and we also have pivoting sections on the side. So she's gonna have lots of brightness on her face. Once she's ready to rinse out, I'm gonna show you the final product.